everyone, and welcome. Looks like we got standing room only tonight. Thank you all for coming here, and we'll get through this as quickly as possible. Our visitors tonight, I think we have 22 the last I counted. Our policy says that you are normally will be given 3 minutes to speak. If we have over 15, we cut that down to 2 minutes. So tonight we'll have you given 2 minutes to speak. So with that said, I would like to welcome everyone here tonight, and we will stand for the prayer and the pledge. And before we say the pledge, Ms. Wells has a special introduction for us. Everyone, please stand.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Tonight I have the pleasure of introducing the student that's going to give our pledge. This is Austin Tucker. He attends Plain Elementary. He's not nervous at all that he has not only his principal, but assistant principal and administrative assistant here standing behind him. And when I read about him, you're going to understand why he's not nervous about that. So Austin is a 5th grade student who's described by Ms. Mahalik as an amazing young man and superior role model. He serves as a school leader, he's a safety patrol member, and is an anchor on the school's WPES morning news show. So I expect I'm going to hear that pledge really loud today. Good news, boys. Austin excels academically and is committed to excellence in all he does. He is helpful, pleasant, willing to do anything to support others, positive, and always has a calm demeanor. Plain is extremely proud to have him represent their school tonight. He's accompanied by Mom and Dad, Ryan and Julie Tucker, and his sister, Caitlin. So thank you guys for coming with him. And Austin, I'm going to let you lead us in the pledge now.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Dr. Stiles, you lead us in prayer, please.
May we pray. Gracious and loving God, thank you for the opportunity to meet and serve our Greenville County school families once again. Thank you for everyone in the audience who is present and for the unique roles which they fill. Grant us hearing ears and wisdom in all matters heard and presented tonight. As the end of the school year quickly approaches, we thank you that our students can experience normalcy once again and are able to participate in a host of activities and events during this season, both on and off campus. We pray that you would place a wall of protection about them during this time and shield them from danger, pain, and harm. For our Tanglewood school family, we pray that you would continue to grant grace and healing as they grieve the loss of one of their precious classmates. Out of this tragedy, may our Greenville County school family find new strengths and create greater bonds among our communities. These things we plead in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles. Mr. Lewis, you have a special recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to say hello to the Malden teacher cadets who are primarily lined up on the back wall here. These students I met with this year actually during Spirit Week. And even after spending an hour with me in the midst of chaos of Spirit Week, they still came back because they wanted to meet the rest of you. And it's just such a great program, and we really appreciate you all being here tonight. So thank you.
Nice to see y'all. Next item on the agenda is adoption of the consent calendar. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. The motion carries. Next item on the agenda, we will go, let's see, do you have anybody to recognize?
You want me to go ahead and do those?
Go ahead and do that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mick. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce 2 newly appointed principals, several newly appointed assistant principals, and a couple of program directors who in a couple of our locations are a position similar to assistant principal. First, let me begin by recognizing our 2 newly appointed principals. It's always a pleasure to welcome somebody to the leadership ranks of our schools, and particularly when it is a first opportunity for a principalship, as is the case with both of these individuals. Ashley Wardlaw, newly appointed principal at Blue Ridge High School. Ashley. Congratulations to you. We look forward to you entering into that new leadership role. Ashley comes to that role having served as assistant principal at Wade Hampton High School, but is a return to Blue Ridge because she was a teacher and a coach there. You have some family with you tonight to join you in being recognized?
Yes, sir. I do have family and friends of the Blue Ridge community, including 6 Blue Ridge High School alumni.
Oh, very good. Would they like to stand?
Sure.
Okay. Congratulations. Brianna Falvey. Brianna, the newly appointed principal at Berea Middle School, currently serving as an assistant principal in the district at Northwest Middle School, but came to us having been an experienced assistant principal in Wichita, Kansas for several years. And we look forward to having you in your new role. And congratulations and welcome to the new principal of Berea Middle School. Brianna, do you have anyone with you? Do you have anyone with you?
Yes, sir. I have my partner, Chelsea.
All right. Very good. Glad to have you here as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have some assistant principals, Mr. Meek.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Quite a few.
Nap time?
Travis Cash, newly appointed assistant principal, Bryson Middle School. Congratulations. You have anyone with you? Glad to have you with us. Heather Gordon, newly appointed assistant principal, Greenville Middle School. Heather, congratulations. You have anyone with you? All right. Lindy Metcalf, Bells Crossing Elementary School. Lindy, congratulations. You have anyone with you? Glad to have you as well. Greg Montjoy, Southside High School. Greg Montjoy, who is a returning, having been an assistant principal in the district several years ago and back for another tour with us.
Absolutely. Yes.
Congratulations. Do you have anyone with you tonight?
Just solo this evening.
All right, sir. Jessica Presig, Fountain Inn Elementary School. Jessica, congratulations. We look forward to having you in that role. Do you have anyone with you as well?
Yes, I have 2 friends.
Welcome to him as well. David Rushton, assistant principal, Southside High School. David, congratulations. We're glad to have you in that role. Do you have anyone with you tonight?
I do. My wife, Holly Rushton.
Welcome to her as well. Chad Smith, assistant principal, Hillcrest High School. Chad, congratulations. We're glad to have you with us.
Sure.
Do you have anyone with you?
Yes, sir. My wife.
She came with you but would not sit with you, apparently. Daryl Tate, Lakeview Middle School. Daryl, congratulations to you. Do you have anyone with you as well? Whether they're sitting with you or not. To program directors, Desmond Chris, A.J. Wittenberg. Desmond, congratulations. Yeah, Shanice with you. Do you have anyone with you? I thought I saw her over there. And I promise me this is the last one. Katie Porter, who will be the program director at the new Innovation Center. Katie currently with us as a work-based learning coordinator. Katie, congratulations. Glad to have you in that role. you have anyone with you? Okay. Again, congratulations to all those individuals. We look forward to the beginning of a new portion of your career for you and look forward to having you in your leadership roles. Thank you, Mr. Meek.
Thank you, Dr. Royster. I'll give y'all a minute for any of you that want to exit. You are welcome to stay and listen to us for the next couple of hours, but you're welcome to go ahead and leave if you want to do that.
Y'all don't want to listen.
That just apply to them. That just apply to them.
Yes, sir.
The rest of us have to stay. Okay.
I thought that might have opened up some seats.
Might need to clarify, that doesn't mean board members and staff.
Well, actually, we're going to open up the whole row by ourselves.
Get started with the board meeting. The next item on the agenda is appearance of visitors. Miss Judy Tanzola is first on the list. Oh, I'm sorry. Judy, hold on just a second. Dr. Stiles, you got to read the rules of the visitors. Hold on. I'm sorry.
As each speaker's name is called, he or she should proceed to the podium at the end of the board's dais, where there is a microphone and a light system. Each speaker has up to 2 minutes to speak to the board. The light system will be green for the first 2 minutes, or excuse me, for the first 1 minute, and will turn yellow when 1 minute remains on the speaker's allotted time. In keeping with board policy KCA, abusive language or personal attacks aimed at students or staff members will not be permitted. All speakers are expected to behave in an orderly and respectful manner. The board will not engage in discussion with the speaker or respond to comments. The superintendent will designate a member of the staff to respond to each speaker in an appropriate and timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles. Okay, now, Ms. Tanzola, you got 2 minutes.
Chairman Mick, I feel there should be more respect for those of us who have prepared statements, and we should not be punished by being reduced from 3 minutes to 2 minutes because of the number of people that are here. Therefore, I defer my time.
Thank you, Ms. Tanzola. Next speaker is Samuel Albury.
Hello. Hello. I am Sam Albury, and I attend the IB program at Southside High School. By far, one of the most influential educational developments is the internet. It's helped us access so much information, but we can't access that information when it's blocked. Obviously, some level of internet restriction is absolutely necessary. Social media, obscenity, games, and video streaming should all be blocked for obvious reasons. However, I believe that the restrictions in Greenville County have gone too far. I take primarily AP and IB courses, many of which need websites or would benefit from access to certain websites which are blocked. For example, in my IB English class, I was writing a paper comparing the 2001: A Space Odyssey and Neuromancer. The websites of the scientific critics that I was trying to read were blocked. But more concerning than that these websites are blocked, it's that so many are blocked under the categories low risk and reference and research. No website should be blocked after acknowledging that it is useful for reference and research. And no website with the category low risk should be blocked because it is a low risk. I've spoken to everyone I thought could solve this problem: teachers, administrators, library staff, technology staff. I've attempted to speak to, and I have now spoken to the district student technology person. I forget exactly what their title is. I'm sorry, because I know they're in the audience. Is that all?
Sorry, sir, your time is up. If you'd put your comments in writing to us, that would be great. If you put your comments in writing to us and send it to us, that would be great. Before we go ahead, let me remind everyone, please, if you have a cell phone with you, which I'm assuming everyone does, please silence it while we're having a meeting. Thank you. Next speaker is Janice Curtis.
First, let me start by introducing myself. I'm Janice Curtis, a wife, mother, and grandmother of 4 children that attend Greenville County schools. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to address each of you. Next, let me say up front before I proceed, I'm not angry with anyone. I'm extremely disappointed as a grandmother and a taxpayer that our school board is lacking transparency between board members as well as parents. The COVID has opened parents' eyes to the bureaucracy that board members operate under and the top-heavy structure of our government-led schools. Our county school board must do better for our children and communities at planning for current and future growth. We all deserve better. I find it amazing that this board was not able to see our schools are filling up to the maximum capacity, and yet you have no immediate plan to meet these needs. This board must stop passing the blame to the county and municipal governments and requesting that they stop allowing or encouraging new housing. Is my time up?
Oh, you have another minute.
Okay. Let's see. I know my time is limited. In conclusion, I understand that some members of this board have spent entire career on this board, and it has become obvious that all of you unfortunately have no concern for our children, only to your positions. This board, in my view, is not about your positions, it's about our children. Greenville County schools receive the bulk of our tax dollars. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not getting our money's worth with this. Our children, teachers, parents deserve better. Our tax dollars being spent on various things such as social emotional learning. We need more schools as our county is exploding. I did have the pleasure of speaking with a couple of board members who tell me they have a passion for education. I do too. My real passion is with children. They deserve better. I firmly believe that we need to expand our schools, build new schools, and redraw attendance.
Thank you, Ms. Curtis.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Alice Rattery.
Good afternoon. I'm Alice Rattery. My mom was a gifted and talented public school teacher. I have 2 degrees in vocal performance, and I've sold with the Boston Pops. I'm an alumna of the Governor's School and was the keynote speaker at its groundbreaking. I work at the Metropolitan Arts Council managing its programs and grants, but today I'm the parent of 2 ARMS students who've been in this program for 7 consecutive years. ARMS is the gifted and talented program for the arts in our district. Students are qualified through rigorous screening. It's akin to the Charlestown Center, whose enrollment is under 600 students. The district states that existing programs won't change in quality or content following a move. 2 things make ARMS instructional content successful: faculty and facility. It's critical this program have access to the highest standard of facilities that we can offer. The Fine Arts Center can't be matched by any high school in this county, let alone middle school. These teachers are practicing artists with terminal degrees that qualify them to teach on the collegiate level. That means they have masters in fine arts, not masters in arts and teaching. In 2017, the mandate was to expand the program. The district's answer is to dismantle ARMS as it's been known for 25 years. They wish to displace the current group of 400 plus students and hire extended day stipend employees. This move will change the program in quality and content. The district states moving the location is an operational decision due to expanded enrollment. Are you aware that the visual arts program only meets 4 times a week, or that many of the music studios are empty by 3:30? Physical space is not the primary issue. Willingness of administration to oversee the program is. I used to see Dr. Floor outside in the carpool line at 6:45 because he was committed to their education. This plan was withheld from the faculty until last week, and they were told to keep it a secret from families. Students are preparing for auditions to a program that still doesn't have a schedule or a traffic plan, 5 years after the board gave its request. I believe everyone should have an opportunity to explore being an artist, but ARMS is not arts exposure or integration. It is a gifted and talented program. program. For those of you who believe this is an access issue, I leave you with this. Access starts with identifying young people. Every child in 2nd grade is tested for GT academics. Why is the same rigor not applied to GT arts? Should the districts
Thank you, Ms. Rattery.
be identifying
Thank you, Ms. Rattery.
that their
Thank you.
child it
Thank you,
has
Ms. Rattery.
to be fostered?
Thank you.
Very much.
Next speaker is Tracy Fat.
Hello, my name is Tracy Fat. I'm organizer of Freedom Fighters Upstate South Carolina, but I'm also an advocate, a grandparent, a parent, and a concerned citizen in Greenville. Approximately 5 years ago, we began our conversations about the need for metal detectors in Greenville County schools. Those conversations went very well. We had numerous meetings, and we sort of seemed like we're on the same page with each other. However, in the wake of COVID, virtual schools, social media, and videos of violence taking place before their eyes, our children have not only become desensitized, they have also become exposed to trauma, anxiety, stress, and PTSD. I receive numerous calls on a daily basis from parents expressing their fears and concerns about their children's safety. Over the past 4 weeks, South Carolina has made national news media headlines about gun violence and mass shootings. My ask is simple. Can we at least discuss and listen to a pilot program in select Greenville County schools? A pilot program will evaluate how metal detectors work from a logistical standpoint, a training standpoint, and a deterrent standpoint, and a proactive standpoint. Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools launched a pilot program which started in March with 6 schools and has already added 6 more schools. Richland, South Carolina Schools, District 1 has also started a pilot program. In closing, I will be the first to admit that metal detectors are not a quick fix nor a solution. There's also a need for more mental health counselors in schools, mentoring, parental involvement, safety and crisis intervention training, and many other things that if given the opportunity, we can address while meeting in the near future. This isn't an attack on the school board. We can all work together on this, but something needs to be done immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fant. Next speaker is Cindy Farrow.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cindy Anderson. I am a mother of a 14-year-old and a 23-year-old. I just want to expand off of what Tracy stated. I would like to see thought of having metal detectors in the Greenville County schools, not only for the sake of my daughter, but for other kids. And I say that because my child was a victim of bullying and intimidation, where a gun was presented on a video on social media, and her peers have been, everyone have saw that video. So I'm asking on behalf of my child and all other parents that we consider having metal detectors in the school. And that will also protect them and also helps the SROs when they are not available. At least they can kind of know what's being brought into the schools and on the playgrounds. In closing, thanks for having me. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Farrow. Next speaker is Janice Butler.
Mr. Chairman and board members, I'm Janice Butler, your servant and CEO from Christian Learning Centers in Greenville County. And I just want you to know that as of April 15th, we have been serving public school students for 25 years. And it's all because of your accommodation of our Release Time Christian Education Program. I have several of my board members here with me and one volunteer leader from Hughes Academy. And we just want to lift you up and tell you thank you for your accommodation of our program. A little girl that I met who was confused about her family dynamic and makeup needed explanation. I thank you that we were there. An elementary student who was distraught over her mother's abuse of alcohol needed comfort and prayer. We were there because of your accommodation. Middle school age students who found refuge and peace after being bullied at school. We were able to be there because of your accommodation. 2 young students whose lives changed and led to the change of their parents and their grandparents. We were there. for the 180-degree change in the life of a troubled, non-compliant student causing problems. His life changed, and as a result of that, the school staff recognized it, and also the resource officer recognized it. So we were there, and I'm excited about the fact that we were because of your help. For the student who was raised up in a low-income neighborhood and wanted to sign up to be a part of our class because he can get out of school, he was able to get in the Bible class, and as a result of that, today he has left his life the way it was, and now he's a minister in Fountain Inn, South Carolina, over a large church. We've been around long enough to see students' lives change. They're grown. We have some who have gotten grown and gone back to their same school and taught release time. And so all this is possible because of you people. Thank you so much for the things that you have done to enable us, and I'm hoping that we can talk more and get better. I have presents for you, and I will
Ms.
leave
Butler.
you today.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. Our next speaker is Stan Juvelakis.
Yep, that's good.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, school board members, I'm Stan Juvelakis, and I have the honor and privilege to serve as chairman of Christian Learning Centers. And as you just heard from Janice, our CEO, on behalf of all of us, and the board members are here, we're grateful for allowing us to be partners with these students for 25 years in Greenville County. And I only got one story for you, and I heard it the other night at our meeting when we had our annual fundraiser. And it was a kid who came to Christian Learning Center, and he came to our class, and he accepted Jesus Christ in the class. And when he accepted Jesus Christ, he had a change. And the resource officer said, you know, that young man, what happened to him? He used to be a little on the challenging side. And his friend told the resource officer he accepted Jesus Christ in Christian Learning Center's class. And you know what that resource officer said? He says, I got about 2 or 3 other names I want to give them to come to that class too. So I want you to know we are grateful. We're appreciative of you. We're thankful for your service. And we can't thank you enough. We thank you. And by the way, I thought I had a hard job. I don't want to switch with any of you after I realize what y'all go through. Y'all have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Juvelakis. Next speaker is Jennifer Hausman.
First of all, I would like to say my speech is longer than 2 minutes. So my speech doesn't meet your requirements probably. I'll get cut off. But I spoke to you on February 22nd, 2022 about bullying. As a mom whose child is being bullied, I had to wait 2 months, 6 days to speak again. What I want to do differently is to talk about facts about bullying. I was reading about your new program, If You See Something, Say Something. Well, I've been trying that for 3 years and got nothing. A teacher says bullying happens all the time in class. And this teacher says they have to see it and hear it in order to do anything. It should never be ignored. Who cares about any child? It shouldn't be ignored in the first place. I'm here as a mom who cares about any child being bullied. A child doesn't tell parents because they are scared, they are afraid, and that makes me sad. Child also results to other ways of dealing with bullying. If they don't tell anybody, they tend to do other things. And there's over 4,400 people that have done something different with bullying. And it makes me so sad. I don't want any child to ever result to doing suicide. It's a huge problem, and I am so upset that bullying is just not important. And I feel that if you want to make your program successful, you have to do something better. Parents have a right to be able to speak and report, not sit here and be told they can't do it. I'm out of time.
Thank you, Ms. Hausman. Thank you. Next speaker is Lee Gravel.
I would just like to say I'm so sorry. I too know of people in my family that have been bullied, and it's a horrific experience, and there's no excuse for it. With all the monitoring that goes on in the school system, and everybody is in a place where they could see something. My son was bullied, and it was horrific. And I went to the teachers, I went to every single teacher of his, and it was ignored. And it got to the point where when he was a senior in high school, he came home, and he did not want to live anymore. I pulled him out of school that day, and I said, "You're not going back." That being said, God bless you, and I'm so sorry for you. I'm so sorry. I'll try to make this brief. I wanted to talk about the violence, with one of those things, of course, being the recent shooting. I think that there may have been many warning signs which are ignored, whether it's the person who was bullied or the person who is the shooter. I think we need to give more attention to this. We all sit around and scratch our heads when someone acts out like this, when the warning signs were all around us on both aspects, both the shooter and the victim. And I also think that teachers are horribly underpaid, and I think their hands are tied in many situations, which prevents them from being able to do more, because if they do more, then they might get a slap on the hand or who knows what else. I think they're overworked and underpaid, and I think this should change too. They have the most important job out there, to educate our children. And so I do believe that they deserve better compensation. With respect to CRT, I'll just keep it to one statement. You never diminish the self-worth of one person to elevate that of another, no matter what the topic. And because I can't elaborate on that, I think you can all understand what I'm trying to say. And another topic is with respect to sex education. I found some horrific books in the middle school library, and I went back 15 minutes later to try and find those books. These books were so graphic that you would not want me to read them nor show the content, and yet they were in the Blue Ridge Middle School library. It's my understanding that they have since been removed, but this has to stop.
Thank you, Ms. Gravel. Thank you. Next speaker is Cassie Walls.
Hello, board members. I'm Cassie Walls. I'm Associate Professor of Criminal Justice at Greenville Tech. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. One of the things that I guess I'm going to segue off of what Lee said, and also what this young lady, beautiful young lady, 12 years old, just told me a few minutes ago. I'm very concerned about the Sora app that is being used in our schools, and I know that there was a reason why we had to have that type of learning for the distance learning during COVID. But I'm very concerned that our state is contracting with a vendor such as Sora that is allowing some questionable titles to be introduced to our very young children that are pornographic in nature. Here in South Carolina, we have laws against the dissemination of obscene or pornographic materials to minors that is found in Title 16 and Chapter 15 in our laws. It's against the law to disseminate these types of materials, but yet we have a state-sponsored dissemination of pornographic materials in our schools. And I know this because our children are telling me this. And not only 12-year-olds, but also 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, and they tell me, "Ms. Walls, this material is terrible. I don't want to look at these images of people having relations, and I just don't believe it's age appropriate. And plus, our taxpayer dollars shouldn't be going to pay for pornographic images for our children to see." And that's pretty much it. That's all. I hope that we can at least form some type of exploratory committee to look into this particular app. That's all I have. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Walls. Next speaker is Daniel Truel. Daniel. Next speaker, Daniel Truel. Okay, I'm probably mispronouncing your name.
Yes, sir. My name's Joseph Troll. I'm a graduate of Travelers Rest High School. I'm a husband and a father. Two of my daughters attend Greenville County schools, And I just want to mention from Mark chapter 10, Jesus Christ said, "Suffer the little children to come unto me." He said, "Suffer the little children to come unto me." And we're not allowing them to come to Jesus Christ. We're allowing them to come to pornographic material. We ought to be sending them to the Savior. I have in my hand 2 books that were found in the Greenville County School District for 2nd grade reading level. Heather has 2 mommies. Families with 2 dads. What are we introducing to our children? We're introducing them to filth. How did these 2 books end up in Greenville County? I'm not talking about Los Angeles. I'm not talking about Las Vegas. How did this filth end up in the Greenville County School District? Aren't we supposed to be the buckle of the Bible Belt where we honor God? What are we going to expose our children to? I, for one, I'm not going to stand for this. My tax dollars should not be funding for my children to grow up and be exposed to filth. We're exposing them to things that I wouldn't expose myself to. My wife wouldn't let me read this mess. Can you sleep at night with your head on your pillow? Can you rest at night knowing that this is in your schools? I can't sleep at night with that. And someone on this board needs to take some action, because we've got a bunch of taxpayers here that are going to want to see it.
Thank you, Mr. Trull. Our next speaker is Cassie Brewer.
Good evening, trustees. My name is Cassie Brewer, and I'm the Director of Development at Public Education Partners, also known as PEP. On behalf of the entire PEP team, and particularly our Programs Director, Keena Jennings, who wasn't able to be here tonight, I'd like to express our deep gratitude for our collaborative partnership with the Greenville County School District. A week ago today, on April 19th, in partnership with GCS and the Greenville Drive, PEP hosted the 3rd annual Teach GCS Night at the Drive, a night to elevate teachers and celebrate their profession in the community. More than 900 GCS teachers claimed tickets to this event. PEP's small but mighty team of 7 could not have pulled off what was a spectacular night of elevating teachers without the support of several district employees who I'd like to recognize by name tonight. Amanda Young, Candace Moore, Deetra Helvey, Emily Meeks, and Susan Clark, among many others who jumped in at the event and helped out. Each of these district employees that I've named were integral to the planning of Teach GCS Night, and they were hands-on throughout the event to make sure that everything ran smoothly to provide a great celebration for our teachers. The event kicked off with a pregame picnic to honor and celebrate Teachers of the Year, first-year teachers and their mentors, and the families of each of these groups. More than 200 folks attended this picnic. All teachers that attended the game received a free My Drive to Teach t-shirt and concession stand voucher, and teachers were recognized throughout the night, from singing the national anthem to throwing out the first pitch to on-field interviews and activities. Several of you got to experience the fun firsthand. Dr. Royster, Chuck Sailors, Linda Leventis Wells, Michelle Goodwin, Caldwell. Thank you all for being there tonight and celebrating with us. With your support and with the district's partnership, this night to elevate teachers was a huge success. PEP looks forward to our continued partnership with the district as we elevate teachers, empower advocates, and engage communities. Thank you for your time tonight, and thank you for all that each of you do for the children of Greenville County. We appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Ms. Brewer. Our next speaker is Thomas Bailey.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Bailey. I have a son named Cannon Bailey. On 3/14 of this year, we dropped our son off at school to attend his band class. An hour later, my son walked home. He was told to walk home because the school was in hold because they thought it had an active shooter in the building. 2 other students was in this office at the same time. They were allowed to stay in the office. When we drop our kids off at school, the school has full responsibility. No one called us, told us the location of our son. No one gave him a chance to call us. The principal called me back, apologized. I've sent a letter to each and every one of you, emailed you stating this. I have yet to hear anything back. I got to talk to Dr. Skipper. Basically, his response was no harm, no foul. No, that's not an answer. That's not an answer. We put our kids in, leave our kids in responsibility of your school to actually learn and their safety. This is a safety violation. It's almost a certain rights violation, which I'm not going to mention because I don't want to get into that. But I'm trying to find an answer. Why was he told to walk home and two other kids was allowed to stay in the building and no one contacted us? This is unacceptable. Just because nothing happened to him, it should have never happened. He has a 4.5 GPA. No disciplinary problems at all. This is unexcusable. I've been apologized to, but that's not changing nothing. In 2019, I had an incident. I came before you. Nothing was done then. Why does this keep happening? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Our next speaker is Caitlin Scott.
Good evening. I'm Caitlin Scott. I'm an instructional coach at Carolina High School, and I also serve as co-chair for Greenville County's Teacher Forum. We're excited to be here again tonight in support of our shared mission to serve our students in our community. I wanted to thank you for the way that you've responded so far to the state's budget proposal, specifically regarding teacher raises. I've just moved out of the classroom to become an instructional coach, and because of my new role, I would not be included in the state's initial proposal for raises. I really felt appreciated and valued last month when I heard you advocating for all employees and acknowledging that all staff members collectively contribute to the success of our students. I also wanted to thank you for your commitment to continue exploring ways to keep us safe in school. The tragedy at Tanglewood last month was felt in a very real way across our entire district. As I was processing the news that day, I felt thankful for the district's strong emergency response plans that were already in place, and I feel hopeful that we'll continue to develop those plans and preventative measures so that all of our students and staff can focus on learning without fear. I can truly say that I'm proud to serve in Greenville County, and I'm proud to join you tonight with my colleagues from Teacher Forum. We look forward to continuing our efforts to strengthen the relationships between teachers and our district leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Next speaker is Wanda Hunt.
Good evening. I'm Wanda Hunt. I have no children in the Greenville County schools at all, but my concern is about metal detectors. Each school we need to bring up the subject of metal detectors and also bullying. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Hunt. Our next speaker is Sasha Patton.
Good evening to you all. Since I spoke in February on the growing concern regarding recess, I've received countless responses from parents, state lawmakers, and local organizations offering their support. Our community, now more than ever, is gravely concerned about the social, emotional health of our children. Our kids need more opportunities to develop socially during the school day. Our K-4 through 8th grade students currently get between 0 and 25 minutes of recess per day. Recess is an academic need. If we want to close the achievement gap, we have to stop giving physical activity the back seat. Unlike many ideas presented here, more recess is free and over time will save us money. Behavior interventions will lessen, meaning children will learn more and teachers can accomplish their objectives in less time with better results. Morale will be boosted and thus attendance will improve. All of this then decreases teacher burnout, making them more effective and more likely to stay in the profession. Since 2019, Pickens County has made changes to their school schedules. Many of their schools have between 40 and 60 minutes of recess per day. Dr. Royster, please reach out to Mr. Danny Merrick, Superintendent of SDPC, and ask for his input. Members of the board, speak to your connections in Pickens County and ask how their schools are benefiting from more socialization and physical activity. Title 59 and SBE Regulation 43231 tell us that physical activity is a mandatory part of the school day. These documents both give instructional recommendations, and they also allow room for teachers, principals, and local board trustees like yourselves to schedule instruction in a way we think is best. Ultimately, principals only need permission from you, Mr. Superintendent, to create time in the school day for more recess. I welcome conversation to clarify language in these documents with any of you. In summary, if we want to close the achievement gap, attract teachers to the profession, decrease burnout, improve mental, social, emotional,
Thank you, Ms. Patton.
of our students,
Thank you, Ms. Patton.
mission of the nation,
Thank you, Ms. Patton.
this is the answer.
Next speaker is Sarah Merrell. Sarah Merrell.
Hey, my name is Sarah Merrell, and I'm just a concerned parent here speaking on behalf of teachers. Collected more information since my last speaking last month. So I just want to tell you, I was told back in January that book vendors are the ones that decide the books that are sent to public schools. So I did some digging. Our books come from a place called Book Source, and I printed some topics out for you that are on Book Source. This is where our books are coming from, and I have a huge problem with who is deciding that these books be put in elementary schools and middle schools and high schools. This is where, so have any of you on the board, have you ever heard of this website? Have you looked it up? So I've been coming since November to speak out on SEL, which is the genre that these books fall under. When we come and we bring our concerns to you, what do you do with them? What do you do with our questions? What are you doing with our concerns and our frustrations as parents? And have you looked into the sources of information that we've given you each month? I clicked on the Explore blog on BookSource, and this is what I found. I brought to your attention that teachers were given $3,000 to spend on books. We're told to get rid of old books. If you want to hear the details, go back and listen to last month's speech, because that's where it's at. Our old books are foundational. They have foundational truth and traditional values in them. That's why we want to hold on to these. Trying to go over so I can get in what I want to get in. What I want to bring your attention, and this was not long after last month's meeting, teachers received more books that they did not choose. And I have had more teachers send me pictures of these books just in the past couple weeks, ones that they didn't personally order. Who ordered these books? Did you order them? Did you tell your principals to order them? They're being handed to the teachers to use. These books are filled with LGBTQ. This is not something that children should be learning. That should be up to the parent on deciding what type of lifestyle, what I want my kids to know. You need to focus on educating and not indoctrinating the children.
Thank you, Ms. Merrill. Our next speaker is Haley Jackson.
Hello, my name is Haley Jackson. I am a teaching fellow for Lander University, and I'm also part of the Future Educators Club and also part of Student in Action at Malden. Tomorrow we're going to Lenore Ryan University for a pitch day, and we're going to pitch a sensory garden for our school. We feel that inclusion is needed after COVID, and we think this sensory garden will not only include our regular student body, but also our special needs. They need a place for them to communicate and to interact with the rest of the student body, and we think that this would be a really, really good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Our next speaker is Joey Mulo. Okay.
Speaking. My name is Joey Meal. I'm a senior at Malden High School. I'm a future educator, Mu Alpha Theta co-president. I'm a participant of Beta Club, National Honor Society, the STEM Club, and the founder of the Malden High Gender and Sexuality Alliance. I am speaking on behalf of the Malden High GSA, an organization I founded back in November. We currently have 60 members, making us the biggest gender and sexuality alliance in the county. I have prepared a message as a future LGBTQ educator. As an overachiever, I stopped doing my work because I started getting depressed as I felt like I was alienated from my other students. I felt alone as an LGBTQ student at Malden High School. My teachers began realizing that I was depressed. I stopped doing my schoolwork, and they helped me catch up in class. But Greenville as a whole is becoming mostly more accepting of the LGBTQ community. We established the Queer Wellness Center in November of 2021. As a future educator and a student who has younger siblings in the Greenville County School District, I am counting on the Greenville County School District to put measures in place to make students, no matter of sexuality, no matter of race, they need to feel included. The Greenville County School District is my home, but I have no problem going to Columbia or going to Charleston to further my teaching career. I hope to return to the Greenville County School District under these circumstances one day. So what can we do? We need to train our counselors and our teachers to appropriately relate with their LGBTQ students. They need to feel included. Greenville County School should be a place where all students feel accepted and can be their authentic selves. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mulo. Our next speaker is Sarah Mag.
Hi there. Corrie ten Boom, who's the author of The Hiding Place, when she was a child, she traveled with her dad on a train, and her dad told her to carry a very, very heavy traveling case. So when she tried to, she said, "I can't, it's too heavy." And he said, "Yes, I know." It would be a pretty poor father who would ask his little girl to carry such a load. It's the same way, Corrie, with knowledge. Some knowledge is too heavy for children. When you're older and stronger, you can bear it. For now, you must trust me to carry it for you. Why did I read all of this? We are asking our children to carry loads that are way too heavy for them. They should not be forced as children to see and feel the world through the lens of adults. Innocence is worth protecting and worth fighting for. We need to do our part as teachers, parents, and caregivers to carry certain things for them until they're old enough to bear the load. So, sorry, once again, why am I reading all of this? Because our children are being violated in the worst way by those who wish to steal their innocence and group them with evil by allowing inappropriate books, materials into their Chromebooks, encourage social justice activism, questioning them about the gender of what they would like to be, a boy or a girl, how would they like to be identified as, them, their pronoun, critical race theory, where kids are being thought one race is more superior than the other, which we all know is false, and sexualization, just to name a few, of the woke culture ideology being pushed into our schools. What does this thing have anything to do with their education? What happened to the 3 R's? Reading, writing, arithmetic. We are ranked number 43 in the nation. Are we shooting for 50? Kids need to learn and worry about their favorite sports, games, and socialize with their friends. Let children be children. They are innocent vessels that do not need to be fed garbage. Parents, you all need to wake up and start fighting for your kids. Find out what's going on with them in their classrooms, meet their teachers, principals, get the lesson plans for the day, whether it's surveys, questionnaires, materials in print, or online. Ask them questions about what happened that day in school. Be involved with your kids. We as parents need to take our rights back and get involved in our children's education. We as parents will determine what's allowed and what's not allowed to be taught in our schools. We are the protectors of our children.
Our next speaker and last speaker is Olivia Phillips.
Good evening. My name is Olivia Phillips, and I'm currently a senior at Malden High School. I was a teacher cadet, and I'm currently working in a 7th grade science classroom at Malden Middle School as an EDU 2400 student through the Clemson University program. I don't quite know how can I express to you all in words how much these 2 programs have changed my life. I have found my true passion and could not be more excited for my life after high school. At the end of my junior year, I had no plans for my future. In fact, I was not planning on going to college because I truly had no idea what I wanted to do. This is where the most influential person in my educational career comes in, Miss Rachel Turner. She asked me to be a part of the teacher cadet program, and I gave it a thought and I joined. This I instantly fell in love with the class and always wanted to do something with my students, whether it be walking around answering questions, to being able to use my full creativity to plan and teach a lesson. This program not only allowed me to get real field experience while I was in school, but it also gave me a job opportunity outside of school as a caregiver at Bethel Elementary School in the after-school program. I started out this journey in August, and I'm now fully committed to College of Charleston as a middle-level education major. Not only am I excited to be able to attend my first choice school, but I'm also a teaching fellow at the College of Charleston. Finances were the main thing holding back, and if I had not received this fellowship, then I would not be attending college at all. This is why I ask why every school in Greenville County should have a teacher cadet program. I think every student should have the same opportunity that I did to explore the experience. I believe that people will be more interested in going into the teaching field because within my experiences, I learned that what it takes to be a teacher firsthand, and I could not learn that just by hearing it. These two programs are remarkable and changed my course of my life, and I hope every student in the county can have the same opportunity and experiences that I have had. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. That concludes our section on the agenda for parents of visitors. And I'll give everyone the opportunity. I gave the others earlier. If you'd like to leave, you can go ahead and do that now. You're welcome to stay. Ready to continue? Dr. Royster, you have the superintendent's report.
In light of my lengthy introductions tonight, I'm going to pass on the superintendent's report.
Okay.
That's a positive.
Thank you, Dr. Royster. Next item on the agenda is 5.01, the 2022 District and School Strategic Plans Update. A recommended motion coming from the Committee of the Whole does not need a second, is to approve the districts and schools' strategic education plans. Any discussion? Ms. Wales.
Thank you, Mr. Meek. We had a lot of discussion at the Committee of the Whole about the plan and the update and the issues we've had related to COVID and how that's sort of kind of upset our progress. And I guess, Dr. Royster, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, I guess. I think what you told me was that if the board, that this needed to be submitted to the state education department, but that the board could bring this back for discussion if we wanted to in sometime once you have data points, and that'd be maybe August, September timeframe, you could bring back the strategic ed plan for us to do a little deeper dive into it. Is that, did I hear that correctly, or was that timeline correct?
Yeah, but I guess to make sure you and I are both saying the same thing, if we extend this into another year to come back in the fall when we have data points and see if we want to recommend or you all want to change anything in it, yeah.
So the plan that we have in place, all the actions that are identified are currently still being implemented.
There are various stages of implementation, yeah.
Okay. And there were, with regard to how the district went about updating the plan that we have, in that process to be sure that the strategies we have in place are still going to remain effective for, given the slide we've had with our academic data. Was that did you guys take a comprehensive look, or was this sort of, knowing that you don't have a lot of data, did you just do an update and was it cursory?
A lot of the information that we looked at had to do with benchmark data. And our benchmark data looks, I think, pretty positive, Mr. McCoy. Given the positive outlook from the benchmark data, we were hesitant to go back and reduce expectation. Now, what that will look like when we get the actual test scores back in the fall, don't know, but generally speaking, our benchmarks have been a fairly accurate indicator of the ultimate performance on the actual standardized testing.
So it's your belief that even though the data we have suggests that we've taken a big step back in a number of our performance goals, you believe that's something that we're catching up at a quicker rate than what our current achievement rate in terms of improvement was? Is that what?
Yes.
So we had a trajectory. We took a little bit of a dip.
Then we dropped. Fortunately, not as much as the state did, but we dropped, which I think pretty much a nationwide trend. But it would appear our forward trajectory is more accelerated than I think we would probably have believed it to be, but based on the benchmarks, seems pretty positive.
Well, I said at the committee of the whole that approving this plan and then approving the waiver to move out the strategic plan update another 2 years is concerning to me, because I think so much in the landscape has changed with regard to where our students are and where they need to be. So I guess I would like for the board, if this needs to be approved because the State Department of Education needs to have it to check that box, I would still like for us to have a deep dive as soon as data is available to be able to revisit the strategies and actions that are in the plan, particularly the ones that the board had identified as the ones that were really important. When we adopted the plan, when we were working on it in 2017 and then, adopted it in 2018, rather than push it out. I just don't believe some of these strategies that we have in place are going to get our students. We have a much larger number of students who need help than did 2017.
Right.
So I really feel like I'd like to have a better sense that we've done a deep dive, and if we need to pivot, that we've been able to do that. And if we don't want to go through the entire process of the strategic ed plan, for the reasons you mentioned in the waiver, I'm okay with that. But more time spent on looking at each one of those strategies and being sure they're effective and efficient. We brought up things like we've adopted. Certainly, we had an opportunity to look at virtual school and how well it worked when kids are learning all online and when they're depending on Chromebooks and the rest. So I would appreciate that coming back to us in the fall at an interim point so we can have discussion around some of those things.
Certainly. Let me correct one thing, I'll make sure we're all on the same page about it. I think it actually pushes the strategic plan out. Where's Dr. McCreary? A year. Correct, Jason? About 1 year.
Well, yeah, the plan gets pushed up, but that pushes us 2 years out. So that means for 2 years.
Right. We would have been 1 year out. That moves us 2 years out. It moves us by 1 year.
Yeah. So I think just again, I won't go back through the details of what I had brought up at the committee of the whole, but in all of our goal setting, whether it's academic achievement or whether it's the issues with teacher retention and what we need to ensure we're able to keep quality teachers in the classroom, I think all of that's important enough to not stick necessarily to the same strategies once we know what that data looks like. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. Anyone else have any questions, comments? Hearing none. Excuse me. Go ahead, Michelle.
Dr. Royster, why did we not receive a paper copy of the strategic plan? I know it was on our computer, but don't we usually get that as a?
No. No.
We've never gotten that as a.
Maybe not in recent years. No. I'd have to look back. See, now you have the original plan. You have a written copy of it. We can get you
we got
another
that in
copy.
2017, though, right?
Yeah, the
And
original that
and
includes
if it's
everything.
being brought up now, I would like to have.
All the updates are online.
Well, I would like to have that as a paper copy because I like to go in and mark it.
You're talking about the
and highlight.
original. You're talking about the original
With
plan.
the updates, because you say the updates are online.
It would just be a matter of we just print off what's online.
If it's something that we need to approve, I would like to have something that I can look at because, I mean, going back and forth on my computer, I like to have it right there in front of me, if that is possible.
Well, it would be, but not to belabor a point, but we got a statutory requirement that it be submitted before the end of this month. The update. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering why we didn't receive it when we were discussing it in the committee of the whole.
We put it online as we have for all the last several years, anyway.
I don't know. I was just used to us having a paper copy of it, whether we can go through it. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comment? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, 5.02. The recommended motion from the committee of the whole is to approve the administrative waiver for the 2023 Strategic Education Plan. Is there any discussion? Ms. Doolin.
Can you explain if this is a waiver from the board or is this requesting a waiver from the State Department?
Actually, the State Department doesn't require a waiver from the board. They will accept an administrative waiver as long as it's been announced in public. I believe at the committee of the whole, I believe it was Mr. Meek, made a motion for the board to actually approve the waiver, though that's not required by the state. Did I answer your question?
Yes, and so it's not actually required by the board to take any action to approve this waiver because you can do it administratively anyway?
Yes. Now, if you had directed us not to do it, we wouldn't have done it. But it's been placed, I guess now it's a motion before the board to be done in an affirmative manner.
Okay, I know that we discussed this a lot already. I just have one more concern I'd like to bring up one last time is that if we delay this, there were only 3 people on this board that have any experience. Well, let me back up. Taking out the last 3 people that were elected, and there are 6 members that will be up for election that we don't know if they will be rejoining us or if there will be someone new, which leaves us a guaranteed 3 people with experience writing a strategic plan. And that makes me a little bit nervous.
Well, I don't know if this will make you feel any better or not, but the way we did it the last time was entirely different from the way we did it the 5 years before that.
So no one has experience. So no one had experience.
So the way it was done, what year was that? 2016. The 2016-17 strategic planning process was different from the 5-year before that process. So in fact, none of the 12 board members at that time had done the process the way we did it then.
And will that process be new again this year?
Our recommendation will likely be that it be the same, but the board may wish to alter it in some way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Steele. And Ms. Wells, you didn't have a question?
Yeah.
Ms. LaVentus Wells.
She can go first.
Dr. Royster, can you explain how many people were involved approximately when this strategic plan was being developed and what the process was so that we, some of our, well, just basics, because I know it was very intense, but I just want to make sure that our new board members understand how intense and how many people were actually involved in the development of the strategic plan back in 2016, 2017.
The process itself took about a year. It began with the board determining like the overall mission and the overall goals. Then we did a series of community meetings. And we did a bunch of online surveys. I want to recall the number of inputs that we received was about 7,000. Then there was also a committee representative of people throughout the district, inside the district, parents, community, separate and apart from those community meetings. All of that work was then brought together, and we used a variety of methods to get all that input. It then came back to the board for the final approval of the process, and that process took about a year. Nancy, you or Whitney, either one have there's like 3 key numbers. It seemed to me like 7,000 was the number of community inputs. That number sticks with me for some reason.
And sir, I had the year wrong. It was 2017-18 that the process was, not 16-17.
The reason I asked this, Dr. Royster, is because so many things have changed over the last 5 years. Terminology has changed. Things that were implemented back then were viewed differently than the way they're being viewed today. And I just want to make sure that, that we're acknowledging these things and that we're going to look at them and reevaluate everything.
Well, that would be true of any time of the strategic planning process. And the first one the district did was well before the state required one, going back to what they used to call the ED plan, which I think was done in late 80s, early 90s. I might be a little off in that number, but early 90s, before there was this really directed strategic planning process from the state.
Right, information.
Yeah, go ahead, Nancy.
Yes, sir. There were 120 internal and external stakeholders that did the more involved process.
That's the kind of the committee itself.
1,300 contributed feedback via forums or district surveys, and another 71,000 students, staff, parents, and teachers participated in advanced ed surveys for school culture and climate.
That's a pretty significant participation in the school district that, I guess at that time, we'd had about 71,000 students or something like that, 71,000, maybe 72. Which that's the idea behind the whole thing. You get as broad of input as you possibly can.
Just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page and that changes can be made as we go along.
Certainly, and I think the next prime opportunity for that would be related to what Ms. Wells had asked about earlier, would be in the fall, which is even before you do your new strategic plan.
Right.
When you can look at the existing one.
Ms. Linda?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak or comments? Ms. Wells?
Not to after we listen for an hour to people speak tonight, which has become, I wouldn't say the norm, but certainly we have a lot more public engagement than we did in 2017. I remember we sent out emails and I literally almost begged people, please come participate in our forums. We're having them in the schools. We want to hear from you. We need your feedback. And we have that now, right? It's a very different time. Virtual school, that grand experiment, which we were forced into, I think taught us a lot. I think coming out of COVID, certainly where we are in education and where students are and what they need is very different. And so it seems to me this is the best time to revisit the strategic ed plan because of the shift that's occurred and because of the opportunity to leverage the disruption to make a new plan. I think we had some really solid ways to help students. You know, the money we were spending on interventionists is huge. I think the programs that we have in place, you know, whether it's the focus we have on career and technology, or whether it's the sharp blends we put on, you know, kind of social and emotional supports for our students and mental health supports, I think all that's really great. But if we don't go through the strategic planning process, and if we don't do a deep dive, I don't know how we know if we're doing everything we could be doing and should be doing. So I don't like the idea of pushing it out to meet, you know, to be able to incorporate Cognia's data or any of these other purposes because of the disruption. I might feel differently if we weren't where we were, looking at our data and looking at the 2-year pause we've taken. But I'd rather us dig in now while it's fresh in our heads about what's happened, and looking at where we're going and what the new tools are and what the tools are that we need to probably put to the side. So while the superintendent doesn't need our approval, since we have a motion to approve the waiver, I'm going to have to say that I'm not in favor, and I would like for us to do a roll call vote so that we can be clear on. It was unclear to me at the committee of the whole who was voting for and against, and the previous motion was also unclear to me about who's voting yes and who's voting no. So I would like a roll call.
I hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Meek.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Sailors.
Dr. Royster, what kind of a message is it going to send to the State Department if a motion was made by this body and passed from the committee to the board to approve this recommendation? Forget the fact that you can do it by yourself. A motion was duly made at a committee of the whole meeting in an effort to bolster the support of this board toward this work when it comes to the State Department. And if it were to fail and you send it in on your own accord, that's not exactly a rousing topic for the community, is it not?
You know, if it fails, I'm not going to submit that on behalf of the administration. And while I think it might be nice to believe that we perhaps don't care much about what Cognia says, the fact of the matter is that's who come and does our accreditation. And it hurt us, Dr. McCreary, I believe, the last time we went through Cognia, because we did it directly following all their changes. And our strategic plan did not adequately reflect the changes in the Cognia standards. Is that a fair assessment?
That's correct. We had to go back and retool and recommunicate points to highlight.
So by moving it, we bring ourselves into better alignment with when they change the standards, which is every 5 years. How we ever started out on an alignment where we were right on top of them, I couldn't tell you, because it's been that way for a few years. Now, back when it was Southern Association, I don't know that they made that many changes. But the experience we've had in the last several visiting committees, external reviews, has been they've made significant change. And then I think we are well served to listen to our employees who have been now through 2 years of COVID, have had to do all kinds of things that to make sure we were still operating and doing the things we need to do. And I think we've begun to show, as indicated by our benchmarks and some of our other data, that we're coming out of that, and that's due to the efforts of those employees. And when they say to me, you know, we'd really like another year before we do this significant amount of work, I think that's a legitimate request, and I don't think it positions the district in any way in a bad place. I think it better positions the district related to Cognia. I also believe that if we were to determine right now what our goals ought to be based on last year's data, we would set our sights too low. And I don't think that's something we want to do either. So this gives you an opportunity to, if we need to do some reset in the fall when we get test score data back, we can do that. We can do that in areas other than test scores. But I think it better position the district in the short term and the long term to move the timeline by a year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sailors. Ms. Goodwin Caldwell.
So, Dr. Royster, we get the data in the fall, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So
test score
that's
data.
basically what we're gonna wait on in order for us to make a more well-informed decision.
About your existing plan.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So that's why we need, the staff needs for us to push it out.
Well, that really applies more to doing the whole process. And you heard Ms. Fitzer reel off all those numbers of people involved, all those meetings.
Yeah.
To Ms. Wells' point, I think people are more engaged and more active now than they were then. So I would expect that workload to be larger than it was 5 years ago. So a more significant amount of time on the part of, because we're not talking about the people sitting in this room.
Right.
We're talking about every faculty at every school in the district.
I remember the process, and I was just wanting to make sure that it was, we're waiting on the data.
Yes, ma'am.
No, I'm a data person, so that's what I wanted to know. Thank you. That's
Thank you, Ms. Goodwin Caldwell. Mr. Lewis.
So, Dr. Roach, I mean, as we listen to board members talk, there's a group of board members who I think are hearing you say, we would do ourselves a disservice to go through this entire process today because there's data that we don't have yet, or data that might inaccurately reflect where our students actually are and may reflect where they were last year during COVID.
Yeah, yes, sir. Both directly related to doing anything to change what's in the current plan you're operating under, as well as what direction you might set for the next 5 years.
But as I listen to other board members talk, I mean, I think the thing that I hear them conveying to me is there's a sense of urgency to revisit at least our goals and our strategic plan that we currently have, to evaluate what changes we would make to those current goals, regardless of how we need to wait to do the next strategic plan. And so I guess what I would ask you is, if we were to go forward and pass this and move this off a year because of all the reasons that you've given, which are completely legitimate, what can we do between April of 2022 and spring of 2023 that would give the board an opportunity maybe to revisit components of the strategic plan and have an actual conversation about some of the outcomes that maybe we've expected that we're not going to get, maybe some conversations about some of the outcomes that we've moved away from. I mean, there's a huge section of our strategic plan that's about expanding access to choice, which this board, I believe, took as a position and then stepped away from because it was not clear what that definition was. And so, can you provide us some suggestions of what we could do in the next 12 months that would give board members an opportunity maybe to revisit some of the strategic planning goals without having to create a whole new one and still work on that delayed timeline for the next
what I would
plan?
suggest as to that would be some sort of workshop late fall. And when I say late fall, because your test score data, almost all of it's back the second week of October, except SAT, ACT, and grad rate, Jason. They lag a little bit. So like late October, early November at the soonest, obviously could be later than that, but that would be the soonest.
So that workshop at the soonest would be November.
It could be end of October, 1st of November. But it could be basically any time after late October.
If we went with the proposed action here, we could still revisit some of this work in the existing strategic plan in the late fall when we have this school year's data, and make some adjustments, if necessary, to our current strategic plan that might help influence the future strategic plan without having to redo that until this new timeline.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Ms. Glenda Morrison-Fair.
Thank you, Mr. Meeks. I think Mr. Lewis asked a lot of the questions I had. One additional question: if we find out and the data comes back, we have done workshops in 12 months with the current plan, how hard will it be for us to do a complete, or are you suggesting then we would have to do a complete rewrite of that strategic plan?
No, ma'am. The suggestion, and I believe at least the question I believed I was answering was to update your existing one to make it more relevant, considering we're asking to push out the other one a year. Not going through the whole process, but looking selectively at the existing document to things that might have changed, based on having data that would inform that.
And I think that's where I'm having a confusion, is when we look at the new data that would come in, if it's totally something that we do not expect, how will that affect the current plan? That what I hear you say, we will have an opportunity to update.
Could you ask me that again in a different way, Ms. Morrison-Fair?
How hard would it be to update the current plan if, when the data comes back, it's completely something that we have not anticipated?
It still primarily, there are other things in there you might want to revisit, but that would primarily fall in the instructional section of it, which is really what you do every year at your test score workshop in the fall anyway. Now, there are other parts of the strategic plan, but the bulk of the strategic plan and the things that has the greatest detail to it by requirement are all those areas that relate to academic achievement as determined by test scores. So it's far less than going through a whole process, but I mean, you could change a lot in there if you chose to do so. I don't think the data is going to show we're that far off the mark. I don't think so.
Thank you. Ms. Aventus Wells.
I've already asked Dr. Royster, so I'm good.
Okay. Ms. Wells.
So I am going to point out some of the things that I saw that bothered me, because what I worry about is that it's really easy when you're in crisis to lose perspective on where are we exactly. There's what we did, and then there's what we got for it. So when I looked at Algebra 1 EOC data, we had a 50% pass rate. We had 24% A, B, or C, which would be the marker I'd be looking for to see if kids could move on. South Carolina's rate was 35%. So 24% for Greenville County Schools, 35% for South Carolina. Our academic rank, so one of our performance goals in student achievement, if you guys, new board members may not realize this, but we put together this sort of conglomerate of, here's information about school districts, and we want to compare ourselves to those school districts in these different places, in these different dimensions that represent our academic rank and success. So we're going to rank ourselves against them, and we want to rise to a certain level. Our goal is to be 10th or higher. So for elementary school, we were 4th, and we slid to 8th. So that's comparing ourselves. That's not saying, in that comparison, everybody experienced COVID. So to me, that's real. There's something that other people were doing a little better than what we were doing. Now, I mentioned it, there were a couple of bright spots, but on the academic rank, middle school went from ranked 13, which is outside of the 10th or higher that we want to be, went from 13th to 17th. So again, slid backwards when comparing ourselves to other districts by those measures. So I'm not saying that we aren't doing a good job and we haven't responded well to our students and to our families and that we haven't worked tirelessly. But I am saying I think it's the right time to take a pause. It bothered me that when we were presented with this in the committee of the whole meeting, there was no data. There were a couple of slides with some words on it, and here's what we want you to approve, which made me feel like it was a cursory filling in the data point, and then here it is, and let's send it on to the State Department. And I don't want to be argumentative, and I don't want to sound argumentative, but we put a lot of time and effort. The community did, you guys did. We all put a lot of effort into that plan, as we should have. But I'm not sure the plan's doing everything it should for where we are now. So I understand what you're saying about Cognitive. I don't know how much work it took to retool to get where, to get it where it needed to be. I know in a perfect world that would make sense, but for me, who has to run for re-election in November, if I do, I want to know now where we are. So while I respect Dr. Royster's desire for great reasons to move this forward, I just still have a deep concern that we're just missing the mark on some things because we aren't going to take the time to do the deep dive. So, thank you, Mr. Meek.
Dr. Royster. Just a couple of notes about that I think are important to mention. I believe we moved for the first time as a whole, the district, to number 8 in the state. Is that right, Jason?
As a district overall, we moved from 14th in 18-19 to 9th in year 20, and the first time to 8th.
So we're actually number 8 in the state, and that's the first time we've been that low, been that high. Secondly, as to your point about data, we spent, I believe, several hours on covering test score returns in the fall. So all the data, every number related to every test score at every grade level was posted around the wall in this room. Every school, every grade level, every test score. Every piece of data I would think most people would want to see regarding academic achievement. So while we may not have presented all that again in detail in April, we did in fact present that when we had it all available. That was either October or November. I don't remember the specific date. So I would take exception to the fact that you weren't provided with significant detail. Just wasn't at that particular meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Royster. The motion coming from the committee of the whole is to approve the administrative waiver for the 2023 Strategic Education Plan. Ms. Stokes, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Bush?
Yes.
Mrs. Doolin? No. Ms. Goodwin-Cowell?
No.
Mrs. LaVentus Wells?
No.
No. There's a part of me that I'm not sure. I'm going to say no.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mrs. Morrison Fair?
No.
Mr. Sailors?
Yes.
Dr. Stiles?
Yes.
Mr. Suddeth?
Yes.
Mrs. Wells?
No.
And Mr. Meek?
Yes.
Six yes, 5 no.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, 5.02, recommended motion coming from the Committee of the Whole, does not need a second, is to approve the naming of the gymnasium at Augusta Circle Elementary School for Mark Kish. We have a motion on the floor. Any questions, any comments? Mr. Lewis.
I just wanted to say thank you to the Augusta Circle SIC and PTA for making this recommendation to the board. Coach Kish has been a part of the Augusta Circle family for more than 3 decades. I think I mentioned before, he is my son William's coach, and he was my wife Hedrick's coach in elementary school as well. And it's just such a pleasure to see someone who has dedicated so much time to this district and to the students who became teachers in this district. And so I'm just really excited that we can honor him for that work.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 5.04. Recommended motion coming from the Committee of the Whole, does not need a second, is to approve letters of appreciation to first responders and school and district staff. Any discussions, any comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. I think they will be going out probably next week. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, 5.05, select facilities study and long-range facilities plan capital improvement program. The recommended motion coming from the Committee of the Whole, does not need a second, is to approve the April 2022 Select Facility Study recommendations and other long-range facilities plan capital improvement program, the LRFP-CIP additions as presented. Any discussions or any comments? Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell.
Like I said, in the Committee of the Whole, when we were talking about moving West Greenville to the Donaldson Center area, I just feel like that is not a central location. And when you start demoing buildings on property that we own for it to be sold, I don't agree with that, because you can't create any more land. And with that West Greenville Alternative School being put at the Donaldson Center, that is not a central location, especially when you're talking about students that come from all over the district to the alternative school. Say, for instance, somebody coming from Slater, Marietta have to go all the way down to Donaldson Center. I'm looking at bus time. I'm looking at that is not a central location. I'm glad that they're going to be getting a new building, but I just feel like that is not the place that should go.
Thank you, Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell. Anyone else? Ms. Wells.
Thank you. Dr. Royster, I know we had a number of schools that we've added expansion or we've accelerated expansion, and I believe some of that could be, well, I guess you tell me, but looking at, growth projections and maybe looking a little further out than we have, it seemed like we had a lot of extra facilities on there as compared to what we've added kind of year over year before. So just, there was a mention of overcrowding. Can you just talk for a minute about kind of how we're projecting and how we're going to be able to meet the needs of the growth in terms of the timing of the expansions?
Right now, and to your point, between the time we discussed this, the first workshop we had and the second one, we added several projects, including a very significant expansion to Woodland Elementary School. And that's based on Stanfield and his department, Planning and Demographics Department's work, their continuous work, they're constantly looking at growth patterns throughout the county. They're looking at subdivisions approved. They're looking at building permits issued. They're looking at occupancy as it occurs. We've had if you remove the COVID years too, and you go back and you remove 2010, for a number of years, we've grown about 1,000 students a year. Our current projections show an uptick to that growth. Now, we're also experiencing a declining birth rate. We're experiencing growth in the county, but the largest growth, I believe, Greg, is 55 plus. That's the largest growth. But we're still projecting, Planning and Demographics is projecting a little bit of a bump from that 1,000. And we, I believe, are looking at close to 1,800 this year, Greg, and that aligns up with what we have in our general fund budget. So the information that we presented to you really kind of breaks out into two categories. You got the one, which is a pretty significant part of your report, where we look at our oldest facilities. And we have replacement of those facilities, Northwest Middle School being, I believe, the top school, whole school replacement there. And previously mentioned replacement of Donaldson Career Center. But you also have additions that were in the existing long-range facility plan. That's the one we're currently operating under. At Ellen Woodside, Fort Shoals, Simpsonville, and Mountain View. You have additions that we placed in at the first workshop at Ralph Chandler, Grove, and Sioux Cleveland. Then we added at the last workshop additions at Woodland Elementary School, Tanglewood Middle School, and out towards the end of it, Fountain Inn High School. So those are really 6 that we've added in there just this year based on, and this was kind of a 2-year review because we did not do a formal plan last year because of, we're coming off a year where our enrollment dropped 2,000. Well, then we picked back up the 2,000, and now we're back in this growth mode. And you recall we made some recommendations that you'll find in the finance section of this to accelerate the timing on some of these projects. For example, Ellen Woodside, Fort Shoals, Simpsonville Elementary, Mountain View, and Sioux Cleveland, all in August of 24, utilizing fund balance. We also made a significant change that would take effect August of 25 with that Woodland Elementary addition, which is about a $27 million addition. So all of those are both a combination of new projects added and accelerating the timeline for projects that are already in the existing package. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and so I guess thinking about the growth, are you anticipating, based on any of this timing, that we are going to be in a situation where we have to start adding portables at any of these locations prior to getting the additions built?
Right now, we're probably going to have some portables in some temporary situations. One thing is you think about, we added a large number of interventionists through ESSER dollars. So we're using spaces we're using classrooms in schools that in ordinary staffing we wouldn't use. So in the next few years, we'll use some portables like we use now. And I think, Greg, we have 14 in use in the district. Does that sound right? So we've got about 14 portables in use district-wide. In a lot of schools, and you see in your document, and anybody that wants to look at that and go online as well as see it, we've got a large number of seats in certain areas. And so we have to look at that. We don't like to recommend redrawing of attendance lines, because generally speaking, people are happy and satisfied where they go to school. So there's not a good reason to cause that to change if we can avoid it. Now, what I do believe will be likely as we move forward, if we see any more acceleration in growth, we may come back next year or the following year and say to you, we'd recommend you take some additional fund balance because we're going to accrue some more. I think we put this time 83 million, where's Robin? 89 million from fund balance toward building needs. We may come back to you next year or the following year and say, we believe you need to accelerate these projects and use some fund balance generated between now and then.
And that's a better approach than having a lesser operating millage and increasing debt service millage, because we need to be sure we have a buffer in the operating fund every year. So we need to be at that 98% mark on our budget, right? So that's why having that money and then carrying that over, moving it over when we can is better than trying to increase debt service millage.
Well, and ESSER has provided a boost to that we would not ordinarily have had by journal entering expenses in our general fund. It's created revenue that you all have more discretion in spending. We like to be, and we believe that's the philosophy you would want us to have, we like to be just ahead of growth. But we don't want to be so far ahead of growth that we're building and causing an increase in debt service millage before we actually need it. We also have to be cognizant, like some temporary conditions like those interventionists, or a blip of population growth that moves through the system, and you can watch those over time. We have a large elementary population. They'll leave elementary, they'll go to middle school, and it'll boost middle school, and elementary will drop back down. Then they'll go to high school, and middle school will drop down. So we don't want to build permanently for what might well be a temporary increase at those levels.
And I guess specific to pick out one school, so Fountain Inn High School, while we have a lot more students than we had projected now, because we're only loading one grade at a time, we have plenty of space to accommodate that student growth for the next 2 or 3 years for certain, until we get to the till we get fully built out. Is that kind of why we have, I guess we show starting in 2-3 years with the.
Yeah, that sounds right. Start on it in 3 and be occupied in 2 more or something like that. Yeah, and as a reminder, unlike elementary, completely unlike elementary, because in elementary, every teacher's got to have a room, and you can't share rooms to any degree. Middle school, you can do that to a lesser degree. To a greater degree, you can share. When a room's empty, somebody else can go in there. High school, and Fountain Inn was designed that way, where teachers have offices so they can literally use their rooms 100% of the day. But even in the core calculation for Fountain Inn High School, we didn't necessarily include those shops as being occupied 100% of the day and all the rooms being occupied. The other thing that comes into play there is, even though they have certain shops there, there may be students who would still go to the Career Center, maybe students that go to the Fine Arts Center. We have seniors get early release, and we have more and more students that take dual credit, some of whom take that off campus. And we now have students that are taking some of their classes virtually, even though they may be in attendance in regular classes, the majority of the day they may be taking some virtually. So the core capacity, or the design capacity at a high school, is a little more fluid than at the other 2 levels. Okay. Yeah. So having said all that, you could probably put 2,200 easily in a 2,000 student school. You could probably put 1,200 pretty easily in a 1,000 student school, something like that.
Okay. So if you saw where we were going to, you don't anticipate us using portables other than potentially using them primarily to address kind of special needs we have with interventionists and strategies like that we're mitigating.
Short-term blips in growth, short-term additional personnel, or maybe some of this, even though we've got an accelerated schedule, maybe the growth hits sooner than we think. We need to use some portables till we get the building built. That would be possible as well.
And these numbers have all been escalated and are escalated out into the future, right? So we've adjusted them for kind of current market conditions.
The closer in projects have a pretty significant escalator clause on them, and the other projects have an escalator clause. Colonel, how much?
It's about 3%.
About 3%. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bush.
Yes, on the, I just had a couple of questions on capacity. On the northwest replacement, that the recommendation was going to be to replace it with a new school, the Northwest Middle School. I'm assuming that when we build the new school up there, the capacity will be increased over what it.
Yes, and we will likely, I don't have the capacity right in front of it. We would also likely build a core bigger than the initial capacity, which we've tried to do in just about all of our new construction.
Okay, and also, what the Woodland Elementary School, what will be the new capacity on that too?
I want to say 14, but that might not be right. Colonel Carlin, I believe, is looking it up.
1,300 seats.
Okay, all right.
13.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no.
No.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 5.06, sale of property on Fair Forest Way and Ridge Road. We discussed this in executive session. You see the recommended motion from the administration. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the sale of 1.37 acres of property to Sacrifice of Praise Worship Center LLC for $137,000.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Goodman-Caldwell.
What was the appraised value for that property? I know that the contract was done in October, but has it been reappraised since then, or what was it then?
The appraised value in 2016 was $120,000. It's been on the market for $100,000 per acre since October of 2016. And I believe this is, see Justin sitting back there, I believe this is the first offer that we've gotten anywhere close to that in that time. Is that correct?
This is the full asking price offer. We've received other offers that did not work out for different reasons.
So in the asking price and the agreed upon price, if you approve, it's on $137,000.
I know you say it's been on the market since 2016, but you didn't have it reappraised since he said it was $100,000 per acre since 2016. It hasn't been reappraised since then?
No, but this is the best offer we've received since 2016. We have no use for that property. It's of no value to the district because of its location.
Ms. Doolin.
I'm sorry if I missed the discussion, so I'm sorry if y'all went over this already. Is it zoned residential?
Yes.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 5.07, fiscal year 23 general obligation bonds resolution. The recommended motion from the administration is to approve the April 2022 general obligation bonds resolution. Is there a motion? Mr. Saylors.
I make a motion to approve the April 2022 general obligation bonds resolution as presented.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 5.08 Annual Audit Plan. The recommended motion from the Audit Team Committee does not need a second, is to approve the 2022-23 Annual Audit Plan for the external auditor, prioritizing ensure that CARES Act, ESSER Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund expenditures are not double counted, and to ensure that the district is compliant with all South Carolina Department of Education guidance related to ESSER funds. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 5.09. The recommended motion from the administration is to approve the firm of McKinley, Cooper and Company LLP to audit the district's procurement transactions for the period July the 1st, 2018 to June the 30th, 2021. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Bush.
I move to approve the firm McKinley, Cooper and Company LLP to audit the district's procurement transactions for the period July the 1st, 2018 to June the 30th, 2021.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any questions or comments? Ms. Wells?
Somehow, I don't remember, I guess 3 years ago, it's a long time now, this audit before, when we did this before, did the findings just get incorporated into Mr. Barber's reports he was given at the time, or did it come to us as an independent?
It's a state requirement that every school district have its procurement processes audited every 3 years. It is a separate audit. It's done by a separate auditor. Mr. Knotts is standing down there at the end of the table, a familiar face from the past, who's now in charge of procurement. But they went through a bid process, and this was in accord with that process, the lowest and responsive bidder. They will then provide a separate audit report to you regarding our procurement processes. And probably the reason you don't remember is that it only happens every 3 years.
That was my question. This will come back to the board for presentation and approval?
Yes, it will.
And then did we get multiple response?
I'll defer to Mr. Knotts. Yeah.
Steve, just one response.
Just one from
Yes,
these
ma'am.
guys? Have they done work for us before?
Yes, they have.
Okay. And the price was in line with what we anticipated budgeted for this work?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And what's the anticipated timeline for when they'll come back to us once we get them started? Do you?
It could be the September, October timeframe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions since you were here to answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Knotts. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 6.01 Board Officer Candidate Roster. It's here for your information. Do I have any questions or comments? Hearing none. Next item on the agenda, 7.01 Committee Liaison Reports. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just an update to the board that the Advocacy Committee had a meeting yesterday over lunch with representatives from Malden, Simpsonville, and Fountain and City Council, as well as the mayors from those councils and the city administrators from those councils. And I think it was an incredibly positive conversation. It was, to my knowledge, the first time that these four groups of folks have gotten together without it being a larger regional meeting. And the private conversations that I've had with particularly the city administrators and mayors from those three councils since yesterday They all really wanted us to express our appreciation to us for convening that group. One of the issues that this board wanted to talk a good deal about with particularly our friends in the Golden Strip is just the amount of growth that's happening in that area and the impact that it's having on us to anticipate that growth, particularly when it comes to making sure that all of our schools have enough seats for the students who are moving into those areas. Two of the city administrators actually have since that meeting contacted us to get additional data to make sure that they have that information when they make future decisions about how land will be used and approved. And so I just really want to say thank you to the advocacy committee and to the other board members who were a part of what I hope will be the first of many conversations with our local municipalities. Our plan is to have another one in the fall with the city of Greenville, and then another one in the fall also with the cities of Greer and Travelers Rest. And we'll just need to work those out around everyone else's schedules. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Anyone else? Hearing none. The next item on the agenda is 801, monthly finance reports. Dr. Royster.
Thank you, Mr. Meek. Ms. Stack, do you have any item of particular note to bring to the attention of the board?
No, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Certainly answer any question you might
Mr. Sailors.
I do have one question. Mr. Knotts, could you please come back to the podium?
You should have run for the door when you left, when you got through.
Jeff, could you share with us what our fund balance is tonight?
Yeah, I plead the fifth.
It's good to have you back in the room. Robin, the question stands though. What's our fund balance?
Unassigned fund balance
Yes, ma'am.
is $340,297,864.
To the penny. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Which was just adjusted by their action by?
February at the board action, 24 million, I believe.
Okay.
In their action tonight, Robin.
Oh, I'm sorry. It will be adjusted by 89 million.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Wells.
So that was the question I was going to ask related to, we're tracking unassigned fund balance, compared to last year, 32% of our general fund budget. We were tracking this year at 39. Where does that get us to when you take that deduct out, Robin? Do you know? Does that get us back in line with kind of where we were last year as a percentage?
Actually, it'll take us down to around 19%.
Okay. Okay, good. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wells. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion we adjourn.
Hold on just a minute. Before I accept your motion, I want to thank Ms. Bush and Expressions for their peace lilies tonight, which is very appropriate. I think we need peace all over the place. So.
Yeah, they're plants. They will live on.
They're not
so
plants.
They're not plants. They're plants. So hopefully they will bring. It is my prayer that they bring some peace into your lives, and that you each bring some peace into this world.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. Mr. Sailors, you have a motion?
I have a motion that we adjourn, sir.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a motion second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.